My son's wife looked me straight in the eyes and spat the words that would burn into my soul forever. "You're lucky we let you stay here." The room froze. Her voice sliced through the air like a knife. My son sat beside her, silent, pretending not to hear. My grandson chuckled under his breath. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. But instead, I stayed still, my hands trembling around the spoon I held. They thought I was powerless. They thought I had nowhere else to go. But what I discovered next changed everything. I wasn't always this fragile old woman sitting quietly in a corner no one wanted. No. Once upon a time, I was strong. I was fierce. I was the one who built everything they were sitting on. When my husband died, I was left with nothing but my son in my arms and the roof of a crumbling house above our heads. I worked, I slaved, I scrubbed other people's floors, stitched clothes until my fingers bled, sold vegetables on the roadside in the burning sun. I gave up my youth so my son could have a future. Every coin I saved went into that house. Brick by brick, tile by tile, I built it into a home. A safe place, a fortress of love. That house was my pride, my blood, my history. And when my son grew up, he was my joy. My reason to wake up every morning. I remember the way he used to hug me tight, saying, "Don't worry, Mama, one day I'll take care of you." I believed him. Years passed. He found a wife. At first, I was happy. I thought, finally my boy has someone to love him. She was beautiful, younger than I expected, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I welcomed her into my home with open arms. I cooked for her. I treated her like my own daughter. But slowly, the cracks began to show. She didn't like my food. She said it was too oily, too bland, too old-fashioned. She didn't like my clothes, said they smelled of poverty. She didn't like my presence in the living room, said I was too loud when I coughed, too clumsy when I moved. She never said it directly at first. It was always little whispers, little digs, but they grew sharper with each passing day. My son, my only son, started to change. He once asked me about my day, kissed my hand before he left for work, laughed with me over tea. Now he barely looked at me. When his wife rolled her eyes, he rolled his too. When she sighed, he sighed. Slowly, his love turned into silence. Then the grandchildren came. 2 of them. Innocent at first, sweet and giggly. I adored them. I carried them in my arms, sang them lullabies, told them bedtime stories. But as they grew, they learned their mother's disdain. They mocked my accent. They mimicked my limp. They called me Old Crow when they thought I couldn't hear. I did hear. I always heard. Still, I stayed quiet, because what else could I do? Where else could I go? My whole life was in that house. My blood, my sweat, my sacrifice. And for a while, I convinced myself it was fine, that this was just a phase, that one day they would remember. One day they would see me. One day my son would look at me the way he used to. But deep inside, I knew. Things were breaking, and once something breaks too far, it can never be put back together. One evening, I walked into the kitchen. They didn't hear me at first. My son's wife was speaking in a low, sharp voice. "I can't stand her anymore. Why is she still here? This isn't her house. It's ours." My heart stopped. Then I heard my son's voice. My own child. The boy I raised. He didn't defend me. He didn't say, "No, she's my mother." He didn't even stay silent. He whispered back, I know, but what can we do? She has nowhere to go. Just endure it. She's old. She won't last forever." I felt my knees weaken. The world spun. They weren't waiting for me to leave. They were waiting for me to die. From that night, everything changed. They stopped inviting me to meals. They locked the fridge. They left me cold leftovers while they feasted. They shut the living room door when they watched TV, telling me I made the place smell. I tried to smile through it. Tried to tell myself, at least I still have a roof over my head. But then came the night of the dinner table insult, my daughter-in-law slamming her fork, her words slicing, "You're lucky we even let you stay here." And my son, the boy who once held my hand in the dark. He stayed silent, he let her speak, he let me break. That was the moment I realized, I was no longer a mother. I was no longer family. I was a burden, an unwanted shadow in the corner of their perfect little life. But as I sat in my tiny room that night, staring at the walls I once painted with my bare hands, something inside me stirred. I remembered the nights I starved so my son could eat. I remembered the mornings I walked miles in the rain to clean other people's houses. I remembered the blisters, the pain, the years of sacrifice. And I remembered one more thing: the papers, the documents, the truth I had tucked away in a small wooden box hidden deep in my drawer. That house, the one they thought was theirs. It wasn't theirs. It was still mine. And that was when I realized maybe I wasn't as powerless as they believed. But what I discovered next changed everything. After that night, the mask fully came off. They didn't bother pretending anymore. The kindness, the courtesy, the illusion of respect, gone. Breakfast stopped being shared. I would wake to the smell of fried eggs, parathas, and tea, but by the time I entered the kitchen, the plates were gone. A small crust of bread sat on the counter for me, sometimes nothing at all. When I asked, my daughter-in-law smirked. "Food is expensive. You eat less. It's better for your health." My stomach churned with both hunger and humiliation. At first, my son avoided the kitchen when these things happened. He slipped away quickly, pretending to take phone calls, pretending to be busy. But soon, he stopped pretending too. One morning, I heard him laugh when his wife joked, "We should just put her on birdseed, cheaper." He laughed, my son laughed. Every chuckle from his mouth felt like a knife stabbing deeper into my chest. The grandchildren grew crueler with each passing day. Once, when I tried to help them with their homework, my grandson shoved the books away and sneered, "What do you know? You're just an old woman who can't even use a phone." His friends giggled in the background. They had been watching the whole time, whispering, recording. Later that week, I overheard neighbors talking. They had seen the video online, me fumbling with a math problem, my grandson mocking, his voice ringing with arrogance. I became a joke, in my own community, in my own home. Still, I swallowed the pain. I told myself, it's just children being children. They'll grow out of it. But children reflect what they see. And what they saw, day after day, was their parents treating me like dirt. One evening, I walked into the living room where they were all watching TV. I wanted to sit, to laugh with them, to feel like family again. But as soon as I stepped forward, my daughter-in-law's head snapped around. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't sit there. You'll make the sofa smell. Go to your room." Her voice was loud, cruel, final. My son didn't move. He didn't even blink. The grandchildren burst out laughing, clutching their sides, pointing at me as though I were some kind of circus act. And me? I walked back, slowly, each step heavier than the last. My legs trembled, not from age, but from the crushing weight of shame. That night, alone in my room, I pressed my palm against my chest, feeling the pounding of my heart. How much more could I take? How much longer before I broke completely? The answer came quicker than I expected. It was a cold, rainy night. The roof leaked. I shuffled out, a bucket in my hand, to catch the dripping water. My grandson appeared in the hallway, recording on his phone. "Look at beggar grandma," he shouted, laughing. "She even collects rainwater because she can't pay bills." His laughter echoed through the house. My son appeared from his room. He didn't scold the boy. He didn't take the phone away. Instead, he muttered under his breath, "Just ignore her." Ignore me, his mother, the woman who gave him life. My chest burned, my eyes stung. My whole body felt like it was collapsing under the weight of betrayal. But the worst came days later. We sat at the dinner table, a rare occasion where they allowed me to join. My hands shook as I tried to scoop curry onto my plate. The spoon clattered against the dish, a small spill, a mistake. My daughter-in-law slammed her fork down so hard the sound cut through the air like thunder. She glared at me with fire in her eyes. "You're lucky we even let you stay here," she spat. The words silenced everyone. Even the TV in the background seemed to fall quiet. I froze. My spoon slipped from my trembling hand. My son looked at her, then looked at me. And then he lowered his gaze, said nothing. Did nothing. My grandson snickered. Yeah, Grandma, you should be thankful. Thankful for being treated like dirt in the home I built. I wanted to shout, to scream the truth, to tell them whose house this really was, but no words came. My throat tightened, my voice trapped. So I sat there, broken, my tears falling silently onto my lap. That night, as I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, the words repeated over and over in my head. You're lucky we let you stay. No, they were lucky I let them, but to them, I was invisible. To them, I was already gone. They began locking the doors when they left for outings. I would stand at the window, watching them laugh, dressed in fine clothes, heading to restaurants, parties, weddings. They never asked me to join. Once, when I begged to come along, just once, my daughter-in-law hissed, "We don't want people thinking we dragged our maid along." I felt my knees buckle. I gripped the wall to stop myself from collapsing. My son stood behind her, his lips parted. I thought just for a second that he would say something, that he would defend me, but he didn't. He closed the door in my face, and that was the night I realized something terrible. I wasn't their family. I wasn't their blood. I wasn't their elder, their mother, their grandmother. I was their prisoner, locked in the very house I had built with my sweat and my sacrifices. And still, they weren't satisfied, because the whispers grew darker. I caught fragments of their late-night conversations, words that chilled my blood. If she dies soon, everything will finally be ours. Yes, then we'll renovate, finally make this house ours. My son didn't argue. He didn't scream in protest. He simply sighed, as though my death was nothing more than a date on the calendar. I pressed my hand over my mouth that night to keep myself from crying out. I shook from head to toe, biting down on my sobs until they bled in my throat. My son, my boy, the child I once carried on my back, who I nursed when he was sick, who I protected from every storm. He was waiting for me to die, and the woman he married was counting down the days. But life has a cruel way of turning. And sometimes, when the world pushes you into the dirt, you find something buried there, something sharp, something powerful. And I was about to find mine. I thought that was it, that my life would end quietly, alone in the corner of the house I built, treated like a ghost, until I finally became one. Days blurred together. I ate scraps. I sat in silence. I spoke less because no one listened. My body grew weaker, my bones aching with every step. My chest rattled when I coughed, but no one asked if I was all right. One rainy night, they left me locked inside while they went to a wedding. I sat in my room, listening to the storm batter the windows, watching rain leak through the ceiling. My blanket was thin, my body shivering. I reached for the old wooden box under my bed, the one I hadn't opened in years. I wasn't looking for anything special, just a memory, something to remind me I once mattered. Inside were faded photographs, my husband holding me, my son as a baby, smiles so wide they hurt to look at now. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in a cloth, I found papers. Old, stiff, yellowed at the edges. My hands shook as I opened them. The house deed. My name, not theirs. My breath caught. For years I had forgotten. For years I had assumed everything was already gone, already theirs. But no, the house was still mine. The storm outside raged louder, but inside me, a different storm began. I whispered to myself, they think I'm powerless. They think I'm waiting to die. But this changes everything. The next morning, I tested them. I asked my daughter-in-law if she wanted to see the old box of papers I kept. Her eyes narrowed. "What papers?" she snapped. "Nothing," I said softly, tucking them back beneath my bed. She scoffed, turning away. She didn't care. She didn't ask again. But I knew now. And that knowledge gave me a new strength. For the first time in years, I walked outside while they were gone. My legs trembled, but I forced them forward. I went to see an old friend, a man who had once been a lawyer before retirement. His hair was white, his back hunched, but his eyes were sharp. He examined the deed, nodding slowly. "This house is yours, entirely yours. If you wanted, you could sell it tomorrow. They have no right to it, none at all." My heart pounded. Sell it? Take everything away from them? Could I really? I hesitated. But where would I go? He smiled faintly. Anywhere you like. Better than rotting away where you're not wanted. His words cut deep. Because he was right. I was rotting there. On the walk home, the wind cold against my face, I thought of every insult, every laugh, every meal I wasn't allowed to share, every door slammed in my face, and suddenly the idea didn't scare me. It thrilled me. When I stepped back into the house, my grandson sneered, "Where were you, Grandma?" At the garbage dump? I smiled, a small, secret smile. For once his cruelty didn't pierce me, because I had a weapon now. The following weeks I played the part they expected. I moved slower. I coughed louder. I pretended to forget things, to stumble, to shrink even further. They relaxed, believing I was nothing more than a dying shadow. But in the evenings when they were out, I made phone calls. Quiet ones, to agents, to buyers, to people who didn't laugh at me. Each call felt like a breath of fresh air. Each signature, each arrangement, was like pulling a thread from the web that trapped me, and slowly the web began to tear. One night I sat in my room clutching the deed. I whispered into the dark, "They wanted me gone. They'll get their wish, but not the way they imagined." And I could almost hear my late husband's voice in the storm outside, whispering back, "Do it." My heart no longer felt like a burden. It beat with fire again. I was no longer waiting to die. I was waiting to strike. The day came quietly, almost too quietly. They had gone out again, leaving me behind as always. My daughter-in-law had laughed while locking the gate, saying, "Don't bother waiting up." But I wasn't waiting up. I was waiting to leave. I had already packed a small bag, just clothes, photographs, and the deed. Everything else, the furniture, the jewelry, the walls that had heard my tears, would no longer be mine. And yet in truth, it was all mine, until I decided otherwise. That evening, I met the buyer, a kind woman, middle-aged, who looked at me not as a burden, but as a person. She handed me the signed documents, her hand warm against mine. In exchange, I gave her the keys. It was done. The house was sold, but I wasn't finished. I returned home before they did. The deed gone from my hands, my heart strangely light. I waited in my chair, silent, calm. When they burst through the door, loud and laughing, I stood. My son barely looked at me, but my daughter-in-law sneered, "Still awake? Shouldn't you be in bed, old woman?" I smiled. "Actually," I said softly, "I was waiting for you." They froze. Something in my voice must have been different, sharper than before. I laid the documents on the table. The sale contract, the transfer of ownership, the official stamp. They stared at the papers, then back at me. "What is this?" my son demanded, his voice cracking. I looked straight at him, my eyes no longer weak, no longer pleading. "It's the end. This house was mine, not yours, not hers, mine. And now, it's no longer anyone's." My daughter-in-law lunged at the papers, but I pulled them back. "Too late. Everything has already gone through." Her face twisted, red with rage. "You can't do this. Where will we live? What will people say?" I let out a laugh, a real laugh, the first in years. "People will say the truth, that you treated me like garbage, that you wanted me gone. Now you'll get to feel what I felt. Homeless, unwanted, disposable." My son's voice broke into a shout. "Mother, you've ruined us." I looked at him, my heart aching, but my voice steady. "No, you ruined yourself the day you turned your back on me." The silence that followed was deafening. They screamed, they begged, they cursed. My grandson slammed the door so hard the glass rattled, but none of it touched me, none of it mattered anymore, because I was free. Within days, the new owners arrived. Movers carried boxes inside while my family stood outside, watching in disbelief. Neighbors whispered, eyes wide, some shaking their heads, some smirking as the truth spread like wildfire. The woman who had been thrown aside was not powerless after all. She was the one holding the strings. I walked past them, my bag slung over my shoulder. My daughter-in-law hissed, "Where do you think you're going?" I turned back, standing tall despite my fragile frame. Anywhere I want, and that's something you'll never take from me again. Her mouth opened to spit another insult, but I didn't wait to hear it. I stepped out of the gate, the same gate they had locked to keep me in, and for the first time in years I felt the air of freedom, the world beyond their cruelty. Behind me, their voices rose in panic, in anger, in despair, but ahead of me there was silence, a silence that felt like peace, and as I walked away, I whispered to myself, "This isn't an ending, this is a beginning." The house was gone, the walls that had trapped my tears, the floors that had carried the weight of my silence, the kitchen where I had cooked for people who never thanked me. All of it belonged to someone else now. And for once, I didn't feel loss. I felt release. I moved into a small apartment on the edge of town. Just 2 rooms, modest, quiet, but mine. Every chair, every cup, every blanket, chosen by me, placed by me. No one could tell me I didn't belong. No one could lock me inside or order me out. In the mornings, I walked to the market. Vendors greeted me by name. One of them even said, "You look different these days, happier." I smiled because it was true. I no longer waited for footsteps that carried insults. I no longer braced myself for voices sharp with cruelty. I lived in peace, with dignity. And yet, every now and then, I heard whispers about my old family. How they had to move into a cramped rental, how the neighbors still gossiped about the day I sold the house out from under them, how my daughter-in-law's face burned with shame whenever anyone mentioned me. I didn't gloat, not out loud, but deep inside I felt justice had finally been served, because they had once told me, "You're lucky we let you stay." But in the end, it was them who had nowhere to go. I thought about my son, the boy I had raised, the man he had become. Sometimes my heart ached, sometimes I wanted to forgive. But then I remembered the boiling words, the slammed doors, the cruel laughter. And I told myself, forgiveness is not owed, not when respect is never given. Instead, I forgave myself. For staying too long, for crying behind closed doors, for thinking I was powerless. Now I know better. I am not weak. I am not disposable. I am not lucky to be tolerated. I am worthy. And that is the greatest revenge of all. Living free, living proud, and never again begging for a place in someone else's life. So when people ask me if I regret it, if I regret selling everything and walking away, I only answer with a smile. No, I say, because that was the day they realized they had lost everything. And that was the day I realized I had finally won.